Welcome back to hopefully maybe one of the most special episodes that I'm doing for these clinics. I am today with my very good longtime friend, Ken Burnett. Hello, Ken.
Hello, John. Hello, everybody.
Ken, I've asked Ken to join us. This probably will be one of the very first special recordings that you see out of a line of some really good special recordings. I asked Ken to join us because Ken has written young Ken has written a book. Some of you maybe have even heard of this book before, and this book is called Relationship Fundraising. Now, any fundraiser of any shape and size probably should have heard about this book. It was first written back in 1992, but I'm so delighted to share with you that Ken has actually updated this very important book to current times, 2024. It's a different time than it was in 1992, Ken, and you're going to share some of the highlight reel of your new edition. Is that correct?
I am John. That's right. So I'll get right down to it. Uh, Hello, everybody. This is just to share with you a picture of the cover of the new book, and it's subtitled "A Donor-Based Approach to the Business of Raising Money." And that subtitle, I think, is exceptionally important because I think when it was first published, as John said, back in 1992. The book was, for the first time, really encouraging fundraisers to move away from a growing transactional based approach to fundraising. It was all about getting the gift and getting the second gift and getting more gifts, and to focus more on the customer, the donor, and making sure that they were happy and inspired and comfortable about their giving. And for the cover of this new edition, so here it is, the just published, the revised and expanded third edition. It's the original, the office copy of the original edition, bristling with post-it notes. And there is a story about that which is explained in the book. But I want to use the post-it note as a kind of basis of this very short introduction that I'm going to be giving you. So just to explain why, um, after 32 years, I felt it was important that we should have a third edition. The original edition, the original book, and the second edition published in 2002 were supposed to be quite good, and the book hadn't been updated for more than 20 years. And really a lot has happened in the fundraising world and the world in general since 2002. So that seemed like enough reasons perhaps to revisit it after a gap of 22 years. But I probably wouldn't have done that if I hadn't found myself in Milan. I was invited to give a talk to Italian fundraisers, and I was quite knocked out by the number of people in the audience who came up to me brandishing their copies of the original or the second edition of Relationship Fundraising and asking me to sign their copies. And um, so there was a general groundswell at that conference that Relationship Fundraising was an important book. And just at the same time, I got a call from a guy who's the chief executive of the Polish Fundraisers Association. And he said, we've been given a grant to, there are no books on fundraising in the Polish language. We've been given a grant to have one book translated from its original language into the Polish language. And the book we've chosen is Relationship Fundraising. And I said, well, wait a minute, this book is over 30 years old. And he said, no, no, this is the book that we want. So that alone, these would be enough reasons for me to get out of my retirement and get down to the business of writing a third edition. But actually, there is a much bigger reason why I felt it was necessary. This will be my very last fundraising book, I can assure you of that. And I will come to that reason very shortly. Uh, the book, I hope now has got a new ending. It's got 15 new chapters have been added to it to bring it up to date. And it ends with a very urgent call to action. And that, whether it will be a happy ending or not, still remains to be seen. So just to explain the big reason that happened, I need to take you back to 2015. And this is my first time as a cover girl. I'm not very keen on that photograph because it makes me look rather larger than I think I am in real life. But this is an American publication, a Nonprofit Pro, and it's focusing on the fact that relationship fundraising then was 25. And what was significant then was that something really major was happening in UK fundraising. The media, the press particularly had the fundraising sector in their sights because of repeated stories of very bad fundraising practices. And this went on for about 2 years, and it was the worst of times for the fundraising sector in the UK. In this article featuring relationship fundraising turning 25, the editor of the UK's leading magazine on fundraising, Stephen Cottrell, said, relationship fundraising has been the darling of theorists for decades, but seemingly left on the shelf when it comes to everyday practice. Could it be the route to redemption? It was the seemingly left on the shelf bit that really got me and really worried me. And of course, I knew that it was true. People talk the talk, but they don't necessarily walk the talk. And in this article, my response to that comment was, this catastrophe could only have happened, the media attacks on UK fundraising, if all those who were nodding so enthusiastically at relationship fundraising had put any of that very explicit theory that I'd put into my book into practice, like they all said that they would. And the answer is they were not doing that. And so as a result of that, the fundraising sector got very bad press. Lots of donors cancelled their support for charities, and lots of very talented fundraisers left the fundraising profession. It was an exceptionally expensive and disturbing time. But it also brought together the largest group of volunteers. Over 2,000 people became involved in a program to try and redefine fundraising and focusing on the donor experience rather than on the money that was being raised. So that's really why the third edition of Relationship Fundraising, I think, is quite important at this time. And we do still have some copies left, so please rush out to get your copy. It is a big book. It's got a lot of content. It's probably not a book that people will start at the beginning and read all the way through, breathlessly waiting for the end. But it is a reference book, and it can be dipped into as appropriate. But I do hope people will focus on the call to action, which is basically all about changing the focus of fundraising and not just giving it lip service, but actually making it happen. There's a mantra, there's a post-it note that I would put, which is 10 words, and each word has only got 2 letters. And the mantra is, if it is to be, it is up to me. And I want fundraisers all over the world to realize that if we're going to change the face of fundraising and allow fundraising to achieve its enormous potential, then it is up to us as fundraisers. This is what makes fundraising such an exciting and challenging career. But there's also some really great things happening in the fundraising sector, particularly in understanding how giving is good for donors. It's good for their well-being, it's good for their sense of purpose, it's good for their health, and it's good for their happiness. So I hope people will come to it. So I just want to give you a few post-it notes that come from this new edition of Relationship Fundraising. The first of these is, perhaps one of those blindingly obvious things when you say it. But if giving is a good experience, donors will do more of it. If it isn't, they'll soon stop. This, I think, is absolutely fundamental to fundraising success. And the common thread that ran through all of the media's negative stories was just how much donors were disappointed by the way they were being asked by fundraisers for ever increasing support. And I think this is something that should be lifted out and emblazoned on every fundraiser's wall above their desk or above their telephone. If giving is a good experience, donors will do more of it. And if it isn't, they'll soon stop. The other thing that there's a lot of emphasis within relationship fundraising about what fundraisers need to learn. Because the difference between a merely good fundraiser and a truly great fundraiser is simply that the great fundraiser knows more. And there are a huge number of sources of information available to fundraisers now, in a way that certainly were not when I started my career in fundraising. And now you need to do a bit of homework to be an effective fundraiser. For those of you concerned with direct mail, I think one of the most reassuring things for fundraisers is actually still the continuing primacy of direct mail as a medium for communicating with donors. And the reason for this is that people like to receive letters. They don't like to receive bulk mailings, mass mailings, but they do love to receive a letter from a friend. And if you can make your communications real and personal to them and relevant and appropriate, then people will respond to direct mail. It remains, certainly in the UK and in most other markets, it remains the primary vehicle, not just for finding new donors, but for keeping them up to date and communicating effectively. And this is something that, again, I think we've learned a great deal about. Simple things like saying thank you properly and so on. But we do it rather badly when we write to our supporters. The number of mailings that start with "Dear friend." Don't start a letter with "Dear friend." What kind of a friend can't be bothered to use my real name? It's obvious, but we do it all the time, and we make mailings that look like mailings and come across like mailings and that are embarrassingly the same. The beginning of success is to be different. The beginning of failure is to be the same. So two further final fundamental principles that I would like to end on is what I call, first of all, the 5 Fs. I think we fundraisers should be famous for frequent, fast, fabulous feedback. Too often fundraisers are writing to donors, and then the next thing the donor gets, once they've given perhaps a gift to the last appeal they received, is they'll get another appeal for perhaps an entirely different subject, maybe happening in a different part of the world. And they think, well, what happened to the last time, when I gave to that appeal for a well in Uganda? We're not great as a sector generally. Some people are much better than others, but we're not great at communicating the results and sharing the achievement. And if you're going to inspire people, you've got to give them frequent, fast, fabulous feedback. And the other aspect, which again is covered in great detail in the new edition of Relationship Fundraising, is storytelling. And I like to talk about that as the truth told well, because we've got the best stories in the world to tell, and we've got the best of reasons for telling them with power and passion that will move people to action. And our job is to communicate that inspiration. So fundraising is not about selling. It's not about asking for money. I wish we didn't call ourselves fundraisers. I believe we should be campaigning fundraisers, because we ours is the inspiration business. And that really has to be one of the best businesses to be in. So if you're a direct marketing fundraiser, I think you have one of the best jobs going. You really can make a difference in the world, and you can have a great deal of fun while doing it. So I wish you every success. But the road to that success is quite a complicated one, and I suggest you equip yourself very well for the journey. And maybe a part of that equipment will be to start with the third edition of Relationship Fundraising. John, that's a very quick summary, but you wanted me to do it in about 10, 15 minutes, and I hope I've done that.
You have, and this, like I said, this will be, people will be seeing this a week after I did my first session. And, obviously as a long student of yours, Ken, and a number of other people who I've respected and admired through the years, there will be lots of echoes of the things you're talking about in this book, in even the stuff that I'm talking about and stuff, as it should be. And I applaud the people who are watching this because, again, they're doing what we're asking them to do, which is consume, learn, apply these things. Don't just put up on a shelf after you buy it and ignore it. Actually, put it to work for you, your cause, and most importantly, your donors. So,
Well, yeah, I used to say, John, that I didn't really care too much whether people read my book, just as long as they bought a copy. I do find copies on shelves, and I sometimes wonder if people ever have taken them down. Now I feel very differently. I do want people to read what I've learned over my nearly 50 years in the fundraising business, because I think we're at an existential crossroads as a sector, and we need to get this more right than we do. We need to make sure that donors enjoy the change, and that we don't just talk about it at conferences.
agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Ken, for that. I'll provide links to where to find your book in different places in the world. So if people want to buy it, they can buy it. But thank you so much for your time, Ken. I do appreciate it.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
Cheers.